This is Doug Green, and I'm the publisher of Technology Reseller News, and I'm very pleased to have with us today Chris Drake of iconectiv.
Thank you, Doug. Glad to be here.
So Chris, you're the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development. We're here at Mobile World Congress on day 2, and we have a very timely topic. Election day is coming up, and those fraudulent robocalls are probably escalating. In fact, we know they are. We're going to be talking about that in just a second, but first, what is iconectiv?
iconectiv is a high technology company that works in the communications sector. We're very involved in data as a service, data exchanges that help the telecom community exchange content through messaging or voice calls, and especially injecting trust back into the system with intelligence around how to detect fraudsters, even before they come into the system and when they're in the system, how to detect them and shut them down.
So if there could ever be a case study of abuse, it's got to be election and election day. It's coming up. We obviously know that those fraudulent robocalls must be escalating. And I'm kind of wondering, here at Mobile World Congress, do you think that AI has made those robocalls more sophisticated?
Well, there's no question AI is a weapon for the fraudster, and that we have to be just as diligent and invest as heavily to keep up with that and get ahead of that using AI as well. But for now, they capitalize on these things quicker than the community here, and that needs to be changed. But yes, the fakes are more convincing, they're more personalized, so they can be more effective.
So let's get this on a more personal level. You know, obviously, what we're describing here impacts the integrity of the election process, and it has all sorts of other not great effects and impacts. But then on the personal level, is it almost like a learning ground? In other words, what's learned and understood by the bad guys with using AI with the election cycle, is that then applied to, monetary fraud and other scams?
There's no question that's true. In fact, mixed in with nation states trying to interfere with our election process, you have the standard fraudster scammers that are trying to steal your identity or steal your money with the very same ploys.
So that's interesting, and let me tap on that just for a second. What I think you're hearing you say is that we may actually have state actors, we probably have state actors interfering with our election cycle. Is it almost like we see in other industries, which is sort of like what's developed in the public sector, so to speak, then ends up getting used in the private sector, only this time in a very bad way?
Yes, indeed. In fact, those of us here at Mobile World know that the second day after texting was invented, it was used by a scammer. They're very fast to capitalize on tech, and this is no exception with AI in election fraud.
So let's bring it right down at the very personal level. So as an individual, is there even anything we can do as a person?
Well, yes. If you receive an unexpected outreach in text, in email, in voice calls, do not be convinced to go to a link. Don't click on a link if it's right in front of you. Don't write down the link and go there if it's a voice call. You did not expect this communication. You don't know this caller is who they say they are. Do not engage, period, and certainly do not follow any of their instructions. For example, a lot of election fraud is triggered by text that says, you don't want to miss this election, you need to vote, you're not registered to vote, click on this link to see your status and get registered to vote. If someone thinks they're registered to vote, or they mean to and they haven't got around to it, a lot of people might be clicking on that link. That wasn't even AI, other than the fact it might be a perfectly worded, perfectly formatted, ruse, which in the older days you had a lot of broken English and bad spelling. So that's kind of gone with AI. We're not seeing a video impersonation of a former president or current president, but we're still using AI to make a more polished attack. And a lot of people might actually fall for that and be on that link. And then we know what can happen just with any scam. To get you to a link is the game. And then they can exploit your vulnerability now that you're there.
So Chris, I looked it up. There are actually, believe it or not, 70,000 elected officials in the United States, which means there must be over 140,000 people running for election at some point.
At some point.
At some point. Now, of course, not everybody's up for election.
Yeah.
There's different cycles. It's staggered. But easily there's 25 or 30,000 people, maybe 60 or 70,000 candidates altogether. So there must therefore be a lot of legitimate attempts to get people to register to vote, tell them where to vote, have legitimate information, and
request donations.
Donations,
right?
Yeah.
Sponsors want those donations too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the money. So, because that's in addition to trying to impact our elections, of course, there's the monetary issue.
Yeah.
How in the world can anyone know what they're looking at is real or not real?
Yeah, so I believe there are websites, just like charities. You can go to a website or 2 or 3 of them and look up a charity and be told whether it's legitimate, registered as a 501c, or they would tell you how much of a donation goes to the cause versus administrative operations costs, which means how much are they keeping. And the scammers who have formed real charities are going to keep the lion's share of a donation for themselves, right? Other scammers are just making up a name or trading off of a name that they aren't really representing, which is a favorite thing to do, is trade off a brand's name or a charity's name. Maybe change a word, but maybe not change anything and expect people don't really notice. But they don't bother to confirm. Look, if you get outreach from a person claiming to represent a true charity, this name, Red Cross, go there and make your donation. Do not make your donation by clicking a link on or if you're speaking to them, giving them a credit card number. Go to the legitimate site, just like it says, call the number on the back of your credit card. If it's a credit card scam, look up the real number or name or the website of Red Cross and donate there, not to the stranger.
Chris, it feels very overwhelming. Can anything be done?
Well, there's obviously a whole life cycle to a campaign and how they get started and what they do as they ramp up and the aftermath, frankly. So yes, at every step in the onboarding and life cycle of a campaign, a text message campaign, which could be a nefarious campaign, you can do something. So when they apply to get onboarded into the system to send text messages to the general population, you should be vetting the entity they claim to represent. You should be vetting that person is indeed a representative of that entity they claim to represent. And you can do that at the front end, the onboarding front end, and not let them into the system at all. You can then, if they got into the system for however they did that, you can then monitor to make sure what they said they were doing is indeed what they're doing. And there are technology companies that would say, look at a link, follow it along and see that it's not malicious or see that it is malicious. And there would be action taken there. And of course, there's always consumer complaints that are sent to the carriers or they're sent to Apple or Android. And if there's enough, occurrence of a certain type of attack or campaign, then that will get elevated to action, right? It needs to bubble up to the top and be seen as a fairly persistent threat that's causing more damage than the other thousands of concurrent threats that are out there all around us. So every step of this life cycle, you can intervene and shut it down or prevent it entirely, depending on where you are in that phase.
Let me bring your company, iconectiv, into this.
Yeah.
What's true on the individual basis, mighty true for SMBs, even for mighty enterprises too. Mm-hmm. What can we do?
Well, look, I think iconectiv in particular is doing verification of the entity that is represented by this campaign enrollment application, and that it is legitimate, that it has no red flags, no FCC judgments, no Federal Trade Commission enforcement actions relative to unfair, deceptive, and abusive practice, the UDAP of the Federal Trade Commission, and various other things I probably don't want to say on a broadcast that we can do at the very front end when they apply and enroll. And we're actively looking to cultivate or acquire a lot of mobile signals that will help us recognize a fraud in progress against a consumer or a community of consumers and act on that. That's a little after the fact, but you have to be watching them at the front, and you have to be monitoring them. Whoever you let in, you have to monitor them and catch them if they veer off the true course that they promised or the legitimate purpose that they're supposedly undertaking.
Chris, we're here at Mobile World Congress. What's your message for everyone this week?
I think there's a lot of interesting things going on here, some themes, network APIs. That is a way we can acquire such data signals and help protect the consumer. You hear about RCS, Rich Communication Services, coming on the scene because Apple recently announced interoperability with that, and iOS 18, which just came out, has that capability. So there are people all over here showing their RCS messages in their text mailbox. That has a lot more capability to create authentic connections, encrypted connections, to verify brands even more deeply than you might do in standard text messages, and certainly monitor for abuse. So those are a couple of big themes that relate directly to trying to put trust back in the telecom networks.
For my MSSP, and channel partner readers, are there things that they can do with you guys at iconectiv to offer products and services to help companies that may not even know they need help?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because companies that are impersonated, banks, utilities, you name it, educational institutions, they need to be aware of that, and they need help to shut those down, because this damages their brand substantially. People stop answering their calls because there's so much chatter about the people impersonating them, and they don't want that call, so they don't answer any call. And that's harmful to the brand's business and their results. So yeah, absolutely, there are things that a brand can do to cut short any impersonation scam.
And let's think about that. I want to sort of drill home this because, there's more here going on than you might think.
Yeah.
It means your ability to collect money, your ability to reach out to partners, vendors, to set appointments.
Yeah.
It's not just the sort of traditional contact center stuff. Everything any business does, even just calling a vendor and making an order or something, that ability might be curtailed.
Well, if you're a pharmacy, then your prescription reminders are getting entangled in a sea of impersonation attacks with malicious links, and you end up with a high abandon rate on prescription collection. This costs you money.
Right.
Everything has to go back in the pool or whatever it is they do with uncollected prescriptions. It's the same with delivery services. If everyone suspects now delivery being a top 5 scam, that they can't answer those calls or click on those links, then real deliveries can become difficult, and that costs a lot of money to come back and try again, and you're still not reaching the person because they don't answer the phone,
right?
Or they don't engage the text message. If they're listening to our podcast, they wouldn't be doing that, and unfortunately, that was a legitimate case of somebody they're engaging with goods they want. It's collateral damage.
Here at Mobile World Congress, one of the interesting things is, although there's a lot of very, very sophisticated things, it's in all the stuff here is in everyone's phone. And I'm thinking, about industries such as, contractors that come out to your home to redo the bathroom, put up a roof, and all that type of stuff. Those guys are very vulnerable to this. They live off of billable hours, no less than an attorney or a doctor. And you're saying to me that their ability to just talk to customers, hey, I'm going to be doing your roof this afternoon, that could be...
Are you home? Will you let me in? Whatever.
Yeah.
And they can't reach them, and this is going to hurt the bottom line, no question about it.
So that's got to be on the radar there for the MSPs and MSSPs, and even the smallest businesses. The one-man shop needs to know.
Yes, absolutely. They should be trying to participate in branded calls, which will be fully authenticated so they're not impersonable, and the receiver of the call knows who it is. So if you have a contractor and they have a company name, and you receive a call and it says that, and you are doing a job with them, you will answer that call. But otherwise, you have no idea it's them if they're not using a vehicle like a branded call. So even the smallest company who makes a lot of calls, confirms a lot of things through engagement, should be using a vehicle like that in today's kind of noisy ecosystem.
Chris, I really want to thank you for joining me today. This has been really interesting. You've given us a big overview. A big takeaway here is how AI can be used as a weapon.
Yeah.
That is a sobering thing.
Yes, it is. It's a frightening thing, in fact. And the more we do to combat that with AI, the more better we'll sleep at night, I think.
I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah.
So where can we learn more about iconectiv?
People can reach out on iconectiv.com. There is a contact us page with a way to put your question in. We always check those daily. We'll always answer those. And certainly Chris Drake on LinkedIn at iconectiv can reach out that way too.
Chris, always a pleasure. Thank you for taking time out at a busy day here at Mobile World Congress.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for your time.